Welcome to Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time, where we aim to break down barriers, demystify blindness, and promote real and lasting change. Join host David Steinmetz as he connects us with professionals who are making a positive impact in the community. These leaders help empower individuals who are blind or have other disabilities to live a full and inclusive life. Let's lean in as David kicks off today's conversation.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time. I'm very, very excited to have our special guest on this morning. One of the things that is really crucial to changing the perception of blindness is advocacy, whether it's for the Ability One program or for yourself as a person who is blind. Because if you don't speak up and you don't say what it is that you need or what it is that you can do, then we really can't. If we don't have these conversations, we can't invoke change. And I had the privilege this week to go to Capitol Hill and advocate for people who are blind across the U.S. As well as here in Arizona to increase employment opportunities for people with disabilities through the Ability One program. And I think it's critical that we have these conversations, letting our lawmakers know that I, as a person with a disability, have the right to choose where it is that I want to work, how long I want to work, etc. And that should be my choice, not someone else's. And through this advocacy work, I'm able to achieve all the goals that I have set forth for myself, and I continue to set more goals and achieve higher success. And really, that's what Arizona Industries for the Blind, a social enterprise program within the Ability One program, allows me, my peers, and my community to do. And so as a sponsor of this show, I'm very appreciative that I have this platform to connect with leaders in the disability community and others who are working to make the world more accessible and inclusive for people who are blind. And one of those leaders I'm really excited to bring on is Sharon. And Sharon, you were there with me in Washington, and unfortunately we didn't connect face to face while we were there. But I'm very grateful for you to be here today and the work that you're doing. And yeah, when I was going through preparing this morning, I saw that you worked at RLCB, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that you did advocacy work there and working, with our government leaders to bring awareness of the Ability One program. Would you mind me just, tell me a little bit more about your background?
Sure. Yeah. And how can we be in the same city, in the same hotel, and not run into each other, especially with each one of us having a dog? I mean,
Right.
usually they make the meetings happen so much smoother. So, number one, thank you so much, David, for having me on the air today. I really appreciate it. It's a great honor. So, my name's Sharon Giovinazzo, and I'm the CEO of the Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired of San Francisco. And you're right. I've kind of have a past of, 20 plus years now of being in the blind biz. And so I joined the Lighthouse for the Blind in San Francisco in October of 22. But before that, I spent, 2 decades building my leadership skills. And like you said, advocating for and serving people who are blind in the low vision community. Before I came to San Francisco for 8 years before, I was the president and CEO of World Services for the Blind, located in Little Rock, Arkansas, a residential rehab facility. And then I had various roles at RLCB, which was formerly known as Raleigh Lions Clinic for the Blind. And I don't know if you know this, but before Raleigh, I worked for National Industries for the Blind as their legislative affairs specialist. So that's really where I cut my teeth on being involved in cultivation and really helping Congress to understand the program that we work under and that we operate under, the federal agencies and everything under that umbrella of the Ability One program. And, for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, that leverages federal purchasing power to support community-based nonprofit agencies like the San Francisco Lighthouse and like Arizona Industries for the Blind. We have a light manufacturing facility located on the island of Alameda, right across the bay from San Francisco. So, and all of those programs dedicated to training and employing individuals who are blind. So, that's a little bit about me and about what got me to where I'm at, David.
Right. So, amazing career. We met through World Services for the Blind, one of your programs that you had developed in computer-based training, and amazing work you're doing to, as you had kind of in your bio about empowering people. And I think that's really what this program does. When given the opportunity to succeed through a career, that's empowerment, I think, and it brings. And I just love when I hear that word or I see that word, and really it just means so much than just giving. I don't want to say giving, but having a job, right? Giving somebody an opportunity and giving that chance. It's just amazing.
It is. And, you really said it right at the very beginning. And it's about choice. When I started my journey into blindness, I tell everybody I got my job because of baptism by fire. I started off in the rehab program in upstate New York, and I lost my vision because of MS, because of multiple sclerosis. So I was 31 years old, and I had absolutely positively no marketable skills as a person who was blind, even though I'd been a combat medic in the Army. I was working as a nurse. I was getting ready to go back to nursing school that fall. That was the fall of 2001. But
Mm.
chasing a person with a red and white cane in one hand and a needle in the other, they do a lot more damage when they jump out the window trying to get away from you. And so I knew that I needed to refocus on that. But
Right.
I started off packaging gloves for the Transportation Security Administration. So, whenever you go through the airport and they have those beautiful blue gloves on, you can thank a person in upstate New York for packaging those. But I needed to build the skills. I needed to learn how to be a person who was blind. And all those other skills that I had as a person who was sighted was transferable. I just didn't know that at the time. So,
Hmm.
but not only that, then I transferred over to the sewing line. And, there was something that was really special about me being able to work on contracts that served our military. That was really personal to me. But, there's some schools of thought. It's like, oh, well, if a whole bunch of people who are blind work together, then it's not considered, an employment outcome that we should be
Hmm.
out, in the wild and serving wherever else. But it was a great job, and it really allowed me to build my skills. Then I went on to do adaptive technology training, and that's really where I got my start. My CEO had identified that I had a big mouth and I wasn't afraid to use it, so he put me in a public policy role because he had always done that. And
Hmm.
he's since retired, but we just got to present him with a lifetime achievement award at Vision Serve Alliance here recently. And all those things, and like I said, that choice and that empowerment. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't start off with those packaging of gloves and receiving the services that I did. And that's one of the beautiful things, is being able to link people. And I think just living your life the way that we live it, and every time I step outside of my door, it's my responsibility to represent the capabilities of people who are blind in the right way, to say,
Hmm.
hey, we can do anything that we want to do.
Absolutely, and thank you. It's so meaningful, and really what I'm advocating every single day, right? Whether I'm standing at the bus stop waiting for that next bus that may or may not come,
Yeah.
and having the conversations that what I'm doing, living my life the way I want to live my life, supporting myself, my family, etc. And why is that so foreign to the general population? Um,
Misperceptions maybe. I was the first blind person I met. So I kind of thought that I'd spend the rest of my life sitting on my porch in a rocking chair. And now I just kind of wish I had a day to sit on my porch in a rocking chair. Life has gotten pretty busy.
right, exactly. And it was once you had the opportunity, it sound like, to obtain the skills and build your self-confidence, and as you mentioned, use those transferable skills, because those didn't go away once you lost your sight. You're still the same person. All your past experiences didn't just go away, and you're able to bring those forward into this kind of next journey of your life, right? And
Yeah, and the key word, you're really good at keywords, David. The key word there was opportunity. I was given the opportunity. There was something there that I didn't when I stepped foot on that manufacturing line, or whether I stepped foot inside one of the agencies as a manager or a CEO. I didn't have to overcome the stereotypes and the misconceptions that happen out there. That there's a reason why there's a 70% unemployment rate among working age blind adults. And
mm,
well, that those stats range from 30 to 70%, and we know how statistics work, right?
yep,
And that I didn't have to have somebody ask. If I walked into a workplace, is like, am I going to have to hire somebody to walk you to the bathroom? Because people just don't know. And I kind of think that it goes back to the most primitive of fears that we have, that fear of darkness, or the darkness meant death. Things could sneak up on you. And
right.
I think that a lot of times that's what people, and we fear what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And but the one thing that I reassure people all the time is like, this could happen to you, and then what would you do?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree, and I think the work that you do, San Francisco Lighthouse does, Arizona Institute for Blind, and the whole Ability One program. I always tell people when I'm in the community, AIB is a role model. Come and see. I can tell you all day long that people who are blind are working in all different types of jobs, positions, white collar, blue collar, entrepreneurs, and you go, okay, sure. But when you engage in and actually seek out and connect those dots together by coming in and seeing what we do, or partnering with a nonprofit agency and seeing that they are going to exceed your expectations and perform to levels that you just would never have believed. And then, you know, pass that on to your colleagues in the community and continue to build that network. But I think that um, that there's, like you said, that fear. Do you, Sharon? Do you think that society has been changing towards blindness in any way? I mean, we mentioned the 70% unemployment, or that range, and that's been a number that's been there for a long time,
Too long.
and way too long. Absolutely. How do you think that things are changing in that field in terms of perception?
I think they're changing. And, kind of one of the things that I really have kind of thrown myself into is to see how the societal perceptions have changed over time. So, kind of like if you look at, the Middle Ages, either it was supernatural, and it was because it was you were being punished for something, or your family was being punished, to people who either you were inferior, or you had these superpowers, right? And
Hmm.
then you get into the Enlightenment and the Renaissance periods, and then reason and science, human rights started to become something, and there was an understanding of disability, and that included blindness. But if you look at like philosophers like John Locke, I mean, he advocated for the education and inclusion of individuals with disabilities way before anything with the ADA came up or anything like that. And so really we started to see a shift. But then as you get into the 1800s, there was places like ours that was established. We were established in 1902, so very early on in the 20th century.
Hmm.
But you had the invention of Braille, something that absolutely gave literacy to people who were blind, that it was something that they could read and they could write, and they could be independent doing that. And then in the 90s, during the 20th century, we had, things like the ADA that, talked about accessibility and talked about discrimination. And then, now here we are today, and you think about the advancements in technology. You think about, I can do everything from something that I can hold in my hand that has more memory than something that weighed 3,000 pounds and took up an entire room. And so,
Hmm.
that just kind of blows my mind. But there's still that part of society that just doesn't know because they're just not educated. So, I think that as we, the collective, we of all of us who are out there and doing the kind of work that we're doing, just the more awareness and education, we can start to shift that perception. But really, there needs to be more representation, whether that be in the media or in movies, and all of this stuff. People who are blind just aren't represented. So the other people who's out there who's looking in, they can't imagine the things that are possible. As a matter of fact, I often hear the term that, well, doing something like that as a person who is blind is just impossible. Well, over the last 24 years, I formed the opinion that they're not actually saying that it's impossible, because impossible actually spells I am possible. And being able to go out there and kind of shout that from the rooftops, to be able to say, this is possible and this is why. It just, there's still an awful lot of education that has to be done to make it to where the perception isn't that it's, oh, either the poor blind people, or David, you're a superhero because you can get yourself to work, or you can do
Mhm.
this, because we get that too, right?
Absolutely. Way too often do we find
I
that.
mean, you're my superhero, but for not because you're blind, just because you're David.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And it 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 is amazing, and that the expectation is, I'm gonna say, so low that
It's true.
people, outside our community, and it shouldn't have to be that way. It should be valued for who you are, not what you are, and we work really hard as whether it's through the Ability One program, through um, other blindness related, or as you call it, the blind biz um, organizations, that as a collective to say, this isn't this isn't charity, this isn't um, a pathway to giving something people something to do.
It's not busy work.
Exactly, and to be able to say, yeah, I was told so many times, why do you wear a watch? Well, I want to know what time it is. You can make a cup of coffee. It just it's amazing, and so it every day,
So
and
true.
every day we're faced with these low expectations and perceptions, and you kind of hinted on, whether it's in media, whether it's in leadership roles, or just being in your community every day. We're kind of trying to break those myths that, I go to the movie theater. I don't bring my dog because he eats too much popcorn and I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I'm there. I got my cane and I got my descriptive audio headset, and I'm enjoying the movie. And people are like, why is there a blind guy in the movie theater? And so you have these conversations, or like, hey, I met this guy, talked to him about his guide dog, and I learned this, and this. Um, and it's that one conversation can create the opportunity. It's that one visibility in the community that goes, huh, I didn't think that David could water ski or attempt snowboarding. And, it just me being me, and that opportunity creates the message that people who are blind are just people who are blind. They're nothing different than
Just
anybody else.
people that
Yeah,
just happen to be blind, right?
exactly. And I see, and through our conversations and past connections, and you're doing the same thing, whether it's, on your way to work and how you get to work, and communicating that out through your advocacy work, or the training programs that you provide there in San Francisco, to allow someone who has either recently lost their vision, obtain the skills and training that they need to be successful in the workplace, whether that's with your organization, and build a career that they choose, and build a career that is meaningful to them, and allow them to achieve, I always say that their version of the American dream, whatever that is.
That's
Uh,
right.
we just hired a guy. He's in his early 30s. Never worked before, never, he attempted. He was first day on a job in a similar work environment that we have here at AIB. And his first day on the job, he's standing at the production line, And the supervisor's like, "What are you doing here?" He says, "I'm the new hire, blah, blah." Is he, "Well, no, mm-mm." And basically, he was out of a job within, an hour of being there. Um, and then we bring him on board. He's, exceeding the expectations. And we were talking the other day, and he said, "This is the first time that I've ever earned my own money, my own paycheck."
Wow.
And what a great feeling that is. And, the conversation we were having was about, now, what do I do? How do I find my own apartment? And how can you say that that's not a success story?
Right.
Right. And it's just amazing that, when provided the tools, and the technology and the training, it didn't take any longer to onboard him, go through the safety, um, precautions, get familiar with the facility. Like you said, do I have to hire somebody that's going to take you around? Just it's a normal onboarding process, and there's really nothing that changes in this process. And I think that's a message that has to get out to hiring managers, HR professionals, et cetera, and organizations in the community. Would you?
It's true, and one of the things that you said is about expectations. If we lower expectations, we will live down to them. But if you raise
Mhm,
expectations, we can also live up to them. And I think that that's
mhm,
really a key word. And whether that, we have our little learners program at the San Francisco Lighthouse. So we start at birth. And if we go in thinking, about, well, this child's blind, that, this is probably all they can ever accomplish in their life, right?
mhm.
And then you set that expectation. I don't know. How long have you been in the NIB fold, David?
19 years.
19 years. So do you remember Jim Gibbons?
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry. Yeah, Jim Gibbons. Yes, I remember him. Sorry.
Yeah. So very early on, I was in the business management training program, which they have a different version of that now. But Jim Gibbons came in. He was the CEO of National Industries for the Blind, and he came in for our very first night there. And I remember he grew up blind, and him saying to his parents when he was a little boy that that he wanted to grow up and be a pilot someday.
Mhm,
And so the parents very could have easily said, Jim, you're blind. You're never going to be a pilot. Instead, they told him, said, Jim, something, someday you're going to run the airlines. That
mm,
what a powerful message, and just
right.
how you choose those words. And that has stuck with
Mhm,
me since 2004. And I
mhm,
think about that, every time that I either set an expectation for myself, or if I run into somebody, that I don't automatically just typecast somebody, I guess, just by
sure.
by where they're at that moment, or what I think. One of the things that I've
Mm,
learned in my journey is everybody has a story. So let's sit and listen to those stories. And that's why I love what you're doing here, is you're highlighting those stories to where they become part of the public record, so to speak.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That was very powerful. I did have the pleasure of meeting Jim and going through the business management training program as well. And I that brought me back to the day I was diagnosed, with the RP, and the doctor telling me, or asking me, "What is it you wanna do for a career?" And I said, "Well, I'm taking some criminal justice classes. I wanna be a police officer." And he says, "Well, there's no blind cops," and kinda walks out of the room, and, okay, I'm stuck holding this big bag of blindness, and
Mm,
here's my first experience of somebody telling me what I can't do. And like
just
you
because
said,
you're blind, right?
if you had that conversation, if the conversation kind of following your example was, well, you might not be a beat cop, but if you follow the path and go into criminal justice and studies, or be a lawyer, or work in administrative office and support, or many other areas
Right.
of public service, that's a different conversation than, walking away and leaving somebody holding a bag. And it's
Holding a big
amazing.
bag of blindness. I love that.
Yeah, and it's
It's true
amazing
though.
when it happens every single day, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And whether that be a rideshare driver that leaves us standing on the side of the road because we decide to use a dog to navigate our world, or whether that just be somebody telling you, well, you can't do that. Yeah. I mean, words are powerful, right?
Absolutely. And one thing that you do, how do you handle if somebody says, "Well, you can't do that," besides maybe bumping them in the nose? "Ooh, sorry, I didn't see you there." But, um
I do have a story behind that in San
okay.
Francisco specific,
Yeah, if anybody did, I know it would have been you.
right? But you're right. I mean, and there's times that it weighs on you as just being a human. And I love what you said. It's like you're standing there holding a big bag of blindness, and it's like, what am I going to do with this? And so for me, it's just kind of, I tell everybody I'm from Missouri. I'm not, for, the Missourians out there. I am not from Missouri. Love Missouri. But I was like, let me show you. And let me show you what I can do. And I kind of think that's my job at this point in my life, is just to say,
Mhm.
yes, I can. And, even I used to say that, well, I know I can't be a truck driver, but now with some of the new technologies that's coming out with remote driving, I might be able to be in control of my own vehicle.
Mhm.
And just to think of what's out there, and if we're involved, and we're setting the tone, and we're doing the narrative. If we leave blanks, somebody else will fill
Mhm.
in our narrative for us. I'm not going to let somebody else fill in my
I
narrative
love
and
it.
say that I can't do that just because. I'm just going to
Mhm.
show you that I can, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it as well, because
Mhm.
I have great tools available to me.
Right.
And does everything work perfectly? Absolutely not. But I know an awful lot of people who are sighted and perfectly able in every single way that have challenges as well, right? And that's why I say everybody
Absolutely.
has a story.
So true. I love that. My version of it is, if you don't if you don't tell your story, somebody else will,
Somebody else will.
and they're most likely not gonna get it right.
That's right.
So it's very important to do that. And um, for me, I always try and think of it as a learning opportunity when somebody says, "Well, you can't do that," and it's like, "Okay, well, why can't I?"
Mhm.
Build on the why.
That's
And
right.
right, because just like in manufacturing and, Lean Six Sigma and ISO processes, is why until you get to the answer. And that's what I think we need to do more of in terms of that education. I don't mean that I want to stand on the corner and be, everybody's uh, standing on my soapbox 24/7. I want to be able to live my life. And you want to come and ask me a question, not my wife or somebody I'm with. Ask me the question and let's have a conversation with it. And it seems like that gets lost nowadays, whether it's on really about anything. Nowadays, it seems like, is let's just talk about it, figure it out.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that. It always kind of cracks me up when you're with somebody, go out to dinner with a friend, and it's like, well, what does she want? And boy, my
Mhm.
friends are, they're like, well, why don't you ask her?
Right.
And so do people ever ask your guide dog questions?
Yeah.
That's what
I haven't had that yet.
oh,
Other
you
than
haven't? I had
no.
a really funny encounter yesterday.
Okay.
At the airport, somebody just came up and started to pet Pilot. Pilot's my guide dog. He's a yellow lab laying right over here behind me. And so knowing what was going on, because he was distracted and they were making ooey cooey noises. So I started to pet them on the head, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I said, "Same thing you're doing to my dog."
Wow. Good for you. Right? Exactly. Good for you. It is it's amazing that, there people don't gain the concept of you can't see, uh, or what blindness is. And, I'm standing here with a guide dog, and they're like, "Okay, over there." And
Oh,
which
the
is the
land of over there.
that's my new GPS app I'm gonna invent. It's called Over There, and, it will have turn by turn directions, but it won't speak, so it'll be a great tool for people who are blind.
You know
And
that would be a great app that if you just hold your camera up and when they point to over there, that then the camera translates that into the GPS and it actually walks you over to where over there is.
oh, there you go, look at
Yeah,
that.
there's so
Yeah.
many things that's over there that I still haven't found.
So any app developers out there listening, let's get together and start having this conversation. I just point over there and get me there. Take me to over there.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah, that is hilarious. So, that just makes me smile every time I talk with you and have these conversations. So we're talking about low expectations and things like that. And what is your how do you educate people in a way that helps change that perception?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to go back to the living your life. I mean, just simply being willing to answer the questions. And somebody told me a long time ago that the only dumb question was the unasked one. So I'd rather somebody ask a question,
Mhm.
even if they feel uncomfortable asking it, because I tell everybody I'm an open book. Because somehow, rather than just assuming, let's have the dialogue. I mean, really, there's so many things that could be done in order to help shape those perceptions that people have. But, I live my life on Facebook, and I know probably to an annoying degree at some point, but
Mhm.
I want people that either have somebody in their family that's blind, or themselves saying, well, how did you paint your kitchen? I want to have that dialogue. How did you build something and use a power saw? I
Mhm.
I want people to ask those questions because sometimes people just don't know,
Mhm.
and I have no problem saying it. I have no problem showing it. It's pretty amazing the things that are possible that even I didn't know what was possible. But,
Mm.
again, if we go to thinking about representation, that, instead of having sighted people in the media and on the movies playing people who are blind, let's take the example of the movie that recently came out that had, or the docu-series that came out. And why can I not remember the name of it right now? Help me out, David. That had the young lady who was low vision in there that depicted
Mhm.
it so well because she has lived experience, right?
Right. Yep. I
And
I
and
agree.
we have more representation, but there's still a lot more. And I think that if disability just can become part of the normal conversation rather than being afraid to say the word blind or low
Mhm.
vision or
Mhm.
deaf blind, or then you flip on the other side and there's that language that is, well, that gives these negative perceptions. Because like, oh, David, I'm so sorry that you suffer from blindness.
Mhm.
Are
Yep.
you suffering over there?
No, it's not yet. When the
Not yet.
heat when the heat comes in, I may be suffering a little
Yeah,
bit,
that's
but
right, you are in Arizona.
right.
Yeah, you
No,
don't have that 15-degree variance that I have here in California that
no,
just makes
no.
it absolutely positively lovely. But, I think that if we promote those positive narratives that,
Mhm.
we're talking about, but also if we challenge the stereotypes. If somebody comes up and says, "Well, I knew a blind person one time and they did this," fill in the
Mhm.
blank with whatever that is.
Mhm.
Or they say, "Well, this is what I think about blind." Have a dialogue. I think it's all about talking and about sharing,
Mhm.
and just let people, get an understanding, and empathy will come. 99.9999% of the human population is somebody who will help if we need help. And I think that sometimes that they're afraid that they're going to do something wrong.
Sure.
I mean, no, we don't want to be driven, somebody come up and grab our shoulders or grab
Mhm.
our cane and walk us across the street. Darn it, I didn't want to cross the street.
Right?
But just educating about what our needs, wants, and desires are, because like I said, this can happen to anybody at any time. We have 75 million aging baby boomers out there, so this is
Mm.
going to hit people's families, and they just need
Sure.
to know what it. it's okay to have the dialogue. It's okay to say the word blind. And on the flip side, it's even okay to say, hey, did you watch TV? Did you see that? We don't even get offended when you say those words.
Exactly. And like you were just saying, right, disabilities can impact anybody any time, just like for myself. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, your vision impairment came later in life. And so you were the first person who was blind that you knew.
Yep.
And when we come to these kind of crossroads and have that, you were talking about perception, and I'm sure you had to go through and understand what living as a person who is blind, what that meant to you, and what was that like?
Well, luckily, I had some really great examples to follow. I'm so thankful that number one, where we are, technology wise, compared to, you know, people who paved the way for you and me, especially me, because I'm only 24 years in. And, I think that I really had some great examples to turn to. And whether that be with the advocacy organ or the consumer organizations that are out there, and just the leaders who were blind in the field. I think about my very first National Industries for the Blind conference. It was 2004. I was a direct labor employee of the year, and my CEO, Don Legitimacy, that we talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't wait to introduce me to this really amazing lady who was blind and that ran the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind, Anita Aaron.
Mm.
And, because he wanted to give me that blindness positivity that, look,
Mm-hmm.
these things are possible, rather than saying, well, you'll always, we'll always have this job packaging gloves for you. I never thought of that as my only job that I'd ever have, because I seen other people who was in careers and
Mm-hmm.
doing other things inside and outside of the agency. So, lots of great people that just gave me people to look up to say, wow, look at that. These things
Mm-hmm.
really are possible, because I didn't know. I had no benchmark whatsoever. I knew Helen Keller. I knew who Helen Keller was because I read the books. I knew who Ray Charles was. I knew the famous people who were blind.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anybody that was real and blind, only what
Mm-hmm.
was representative on television or what I had read in a book.
Mm.
So I mean, I was so fortunate to get such early exposure in my career to be able to say, this is possible. And then, as much as I've said, over the years, it's like, well, one of these days I'm going to go out and I'm going to go into the private sector and I'm going to do something outside of blindness. I have that option if I want to do it. I mean, after all, I secured an MSW and an MBA. I have some pretty good chances out there to
Mm-hmm.
go out and do something, but I wanted to give back what was given to me, and I want to serve as the example that I had so many people to be able to do. And I think about all the hurdles that I didn't have to overcome because of what the people who came before me did. So I'm
Wow.
really lucky.
Yeah, very impactful, and it's fantastic that there are leaders out there like yourself that are living the experience and giving back and being that mentor and telling people, um, and not just verbally, but showing it and living the life
Right.
that if you want it, you can do it.
That's right.
And
Sometimes you got to work for it though.
yeah,
And you can't
well,
be afraid to roll up your sleeves and do the work. So
so true. And that's where the differentiation comes, right? Is this program is it's not a given, right? You don't get a job just because you're blind.
it's not a
Um,
charity program,
it's
that's
not
for
a
sure.
charity program, that's right. And and same thing in the private sector too, is you'll find companies that are very inclusive is because they have a leader that is most likely has somebody in their family with a disability,
True.
and they're sitting back and going, what is the future for my child or my sibling or whatever it is? And they see that there's this need to create opportunities, create the pathway for people with disabilities to live the life that they want. And but it's only seems to be such a small group of those leaders that can see are impacted, right? Because they know they're living it.
They have a
So they
personal
know
story. That's
personal
right.
stories, so they have to create something that's not already there within their organization or another area. Um, and so then that's their motivation. And just like, the Ability One program is recognizing that, look, private sector, there's some advancements. We see, a slight increase in the employment among people with disabilities, which is awesome. But we still have this ginormous figure standing in front of us. And if there's an organization that's willing to create the lines of business to provide basically fee for service or produce a product and sell a product just like any other business in the community, but wants to be inclusive of all people, why shouldn't we grow that or build that or connect with private sector to help individuals get to where we are and be that role model or mentor for others?
It's true. And, when you think about it, going back to the statistic of 75 million aging baby boomers, there's not a big enough workforce out there to replace them. And we're losing people that are skilled every day. And you think about, logistics, and you think about supply chain and all of that stuff. When we have this great qualified workforce, or a workforce that can be qualified in whatever, and that's one of the things that, between San Francisco Lighthouse and Arizona Industries for the Blind, and those opportunities are being created, but that can be done everywhere. That, let's plug this workforce in, because let me tell you, they're going to be the most faithful employees that you ever have. They'll crawl over snowbanks. Well, not in Phoenix, they won't crawl over snowbanks, and not in San
Not
Francisco.
in San Francisco.
They will be your most faithful employees ever, because they're so
Mhm.
thankful to have a job, and to be given the opportunity. But, as agencies that serve people who are blind, it's also our job to make sure that they are armed with the tools necessary to compete with everybody else that walks in off
Mhm.
the street. And, there's a reason why there's a 70% unemployment rate, and some of it is societal, but also
Mhm.
some of it is being able to have access to those skills that are needed.
Right.
A couple of years ago on C-SPAN, I love C-SPAN, by the way. I kind of watch it like the NFL, and I yell at it and, do stuff like that. And about a couple of years ago, I was listening to the Winners Governors Convention, and they were talking about the workforce, and this had nothing to do with people with disabilities. But they were saying it's the soft skills, it's the water cooler talk, and it's not
Mhm.
the hard skills. College teaches you, the hard skills that you need. It's the soft
Mhm.
skills that is being lost out there somewhere.
Mhm.
And so we need to not only have the same qualifications as far as, whatever degree or certification program that there needs to be out there, but we also need to have everything else that makes you capable in a workforce, that makes you happy in a workforce. And
Mhm.
that's why we all concentrate so heavily on our workforce development programs, is one, to lower that statistic, but to go out there and talk to employers. You think that, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, right in the middle of Silicon Valley, and you think about all the high tech jobs that are
Mhm.
available, and going out and talking to those people and saying that, these are the things that we can do. But we need to be able to listen to that employer as well, to say, what are your needs? And then how do we fit into where those needs are? Because there's jobs out there, and there's jobs that's not getting filled. There's people who don't want to go
Right.
back to the office. They need people in the office. And we have a workforce that can do that. So, I encourage anybody who's listening to your podcast out here to be able to say, I'm an employer and I'd like to learn more about this. And whether they reach out to you or whoever they reach out to, let's start having the dialogue of how we can
Mhm.
incorporate people. And part of that is also rethinking about how we do things, whether that be our website or whatever. When we think about universal design, if people who are blind can access it, everybody can access it, right? And
Absolutely.
and we have people out there who have disposable income, that if they can't access your website, guess what? They're not going to buy your product from you. And
Mhm.
so if we can think through those lenses, one of the things that we have at the Lighthouse, in San Francisco, is we have an accessible user experience department that goes out there and does those evaluations
Mhm.
for companies. But on the flip side of that is, how do we get people into that workforce? And whether that be through scripting, and they're using the screen reading technology like I use a Mac, but on the Windows side of it, there's several screen reading programs out there. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is we're entering into this world of AI and all of this stuff, that all the evil stuff that they talk
Mhm.
about, how it can do
Right.
this, how it can do that. I think about one of the things that we get somebody into a job, and it takes all these hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars to script a computer and on some type of proprietary software, and then that software updates, and
Mhm.
it might take 2 or
Mhm.
3 more months to get that, and that's not being productive to the employer. But
Sure.
I think, like, with the use of, like, AI or some type of tool that we just don't even know about yet,
Mhm.
that it runs that update at night, it runs through the work processes, and whatever is broken, AI just goes in there and writes the script for you. When you come in the next morning, your computer is up and running, and you're logging in with your sighted peers. And so
Right.
I think that there are some things out there that we can't even imagine the possibilities of yet, but I'm really hopeful that, that the more that we have the dialogue and the more that we talk about this, the more that we can lower that unemployment rate, because that's what we're both working for, I know. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Great,
sorry, I
great
got off on a
insight.
soapbox there, didn't I?
No, I love it. And there's nobody better than you to be standing up there doing it. And you touched on something about um, the individual, right? And for organizations that provide the vocational training, and we talk about the 70% unemployment. It's not just the employers, right? We have to make sure that um, people are trained,
Oh,
they're
absolutely.
they're ready, and really have that desire to work. Um, how I know through your organization there at the San Francisco Lighthouse, you guys provide any vocational training there?
We're working on that. We have a
Mhm.
workforce development program, and we're looking at how we don't reinvent the wheel, so to speak,
Mhm.
and how do we partner. And so NIB has their Insight program, which is
Mhm.
kind of where all the upward mobility programs has went
Sure.
through. And then there's other organizations. Of course, I want to partner with WSB because I know what they're doing and I know what they're
Right.
doing great at. And so how do we plug all that in? But we have to listen to the employers to see what do they need,
Sure.
and then arm people. If you read things that how they predict what the workforce is going to do now, and again, we're not talking about disability specific, we're talking about just in general, that
Mhm.
people will have 7 different careers in their 20 years of work.
Hmm.
That's a lot. And not only
Sure.
that, but a job that one of our people may be able to get 10 years from now, we don't even know what the name of it is or what the skills
Right.
are. And so we need to be able to teach our people to be lifelong learners, to be able
Mhm.
to pivot. People, not just people who are blind, but for
Mhm.
anybody who's listening who's blind, people in general just do not like change. We get really
Right.
comfortable in our regular routine and everything that we're doing, and we don't necessarily want to change. But we're in a society now where change is inevitable. And you can be on the side of the wall that says that progress is optional. And, if progress is optional, you become irrelevant. And whether that be for a
Mhm.
business or whether that becomes for an individual, that, we don't want to be irrelevant in the things that we do or what we want to see or the life that we want to
Right.
live. We want to be able to live that life and be able to go out there and access what the world has to offer. It's a great big world out there. And there's so many things that is just so exciting, and that the world of work and education and lifelong learning that just will open up for people. So it doesn't matter where you go somewhere.
Right.
And for the employer side, there's plenty of people out there that can help you incorporate. I mean, because we have to know that everybody's got DEI on the end of their tongue.
Mhm.
And number one, it's DEIA for us. And so we talk about that A being accessibility,
Right.
and to remember that part of diversity includes disability. And it doesn't have to be this big, scary, taboo subject.
Mhm.
It's just, this just happens to be a person who just happens to not be able to see. But as long as they can compete with everybody else, we're not asking you to do a favor and just give them a job. We want
Right.
them to walk in and be able to compete with everybody else, but for you to see them for their capabilities, not their disabilities.
Well, I don't think I could say it any better than that. Thank you. It's exactly the message that I try to get out through this platform, and as well as through my day-to-day activities at AIB. I can't believe that we've kind of just blown through our time, but
This went so fast.
it did. It did. We just keep on going, but I see the clock is running. So how would somebody who is listening to this show live today, or find it on the platforms that they get all their podcasts from, how would somebody get in contact with you and San Francisco Lighthouse to learn more about the work that you do, and how maybe you can help them in their inclusion efforts?
And so really easy, we're lighthouse-sf.org. You can also find me on Facebook. My name's not the easiest to spell, but Sharon Giovinazzo, that's Giov, like Victor, Inazzo. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, X, and of course, LinkedIn out there. And I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with anybody at any time. But go out there and just do some exploring. And if we ever run into each other, or if we ever have a call, I guarantee you that, one, I'm going to leave you laughing, but I'm also going to give you some stuff to think about. So
Awesome. Thank you. And I hope for everybody listening that our conversation today just reinforces my belief that with the right training, right technology, and the right attitude, people who are blind are successful in the workplace and can compete successfully in the workplace. So thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Arizona Industries for the Blind, for continuing to support this show and getting our message out.
Thank you so much, David. It was an honor to be on here, and thanks for the invite.
Thank you for listening to Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time, with your host, David Steinmetz. Be sure to subscribe to Changing the Perception of Blindness, one conversation at a time, on your favorite podcast platform. And tune in live on Phoenix Business Radio X every third Friday at 9 a.m. We hope you feel inspired by today's conversation, and maybe we've even sparked a new idea or opportunity.